Joining us now, my old friend, who's also, of course, hosted this week when I've been on, and it's always fun to watch him mixing it up with the Pauls in Washington. He joins us now, Jake Tapper. Hey, Jake.
Hey, Laura. How are you?
I'm great. So
happy belated Mother's Day, by the way.
Thank you. That is very nice of you. I appreciate that. Boehner said, "Look, we're looking about what's happening in Europe right now." The debate between the austerity crowd and the stimulus crowd, and people rushing the banks, and Greece and Spain's in deep trouble. Reid comes around and says, "Oh, you're all just a bunch of obstructionists. You don't want to get anything done." What's the truth here from your perspective, given the reporting you've done and coverage of the White House?
I mean, I think the White House and Democrats feel that, it's just to step back, obviously we're talking about what is being called Taxmageddon, trillions of dollars up in the air that comes to a fore on December 31st. That is, the Bush tax cuts, $4 trillion, are set to expire as of midnight as the year becomes 2013. There's also this sequester, which is $1.2 trillion in deep cuts to domestic programs and the Pentagon budget. That's because the super committee couldn't come up with deficit reduction, so this will automatically happen. And then there's also the debt ceiling, and this all comes to a fore in December. So if you add it all up, I think it's something like $8 trillion, and everybody in Washington knows this, and the closer we get to it, the worse it's going to be for the economy because of the uncertainty. And there is just no ability right now to compromise. And the two sides say the following: that Democrats say, look, this needs to be a balanced approach. This is their language, a balanced approach, which includes both some tax increases and also reductions to entitlement spending and also reductions to domestic spending.
Well, Jake, you're a smart guy. I mean, maybe I'm just a kid from Connecticut and I don't know much, but when you haven't passed a budget in, what is it? I've lost track. It was 1,000 days, months back.
More than 3 years, yeah.
Yeah, so more than 3 years, you have not been able to pass a budget.
Right.
In the democratically controlled Senate. You criticize Republicans for whatever you want in the House. They're too much cutting and not enough raising tax, whatever it is, to criticize them. But at least they come up with something. And meanwhile, the Democrats come up with nothing and then just rail against how the Republicans are obstructionists and vote down the president's attempt. The president did attempt to put forward some budget proposal. They vote that down 99-0. Don't even let it get out of committee yesterday. And yet the Republicans are the obstructionists. Well, why don't the Democrats allow the president's budget to make its way forward, and then at least you can debate the president's approach versus more the Ryan approach?
Look, I agree. I mean, the idea that the entire Congress is dysfunctional, not just House Republicans, but that everything has fallen apart, as I think is a cogent one. You point out that the Senate Democrats have not passed a budget, even though they are supposed to. They are obligated to, and they have not. What they do is they wait until the very, very end, and then they pass this omnibus spending bill, as opposed to setting it at the beginning of the year with the budget resolution, and then ultimately passing something, according to, around Labor Day, which is usually when it's done. The Republican argument is what you just said, basically, that the Democrats have not come forward with any sort of cogent plan. The truth of the matter is that there were a bunch of budgets that were introduced in the Senate yesterday, and not one of them passed, including the Ryan budget, including when Republicans introduced a resolution based on the Obama budget. Not one of them passed. And we are in a period of dysfunction right now in Washington. Now, this does happen during election years.
No, this happened for 3 years, though, Jake. This has been 3 years.
But this has been going on for 3 years. And the truth of the matter is I think everybody in power says, well, ultimately there will be some sort of compromise reached, which is true. That is ultimately what has happened every time, but it does do damage to the country in terms of reputation, in terms of raising the debt ceiling, in terms of our bond rating. So we'll see what happens. We are now 6.5 months ahead of this, and there just doesn't seem to be, at least publicly, any acceptance that there will be any outline of what the compromise would be, what it would look like, something that both the House and the Senate and the White House would sign off on. And it's just, the truth of the matter is that the one sticking point is whether or not there would be any taxes raised. Now, to take a step back and you go back to the debt ceiling negotiations and the deficit negotiations a year ago, you had John Boehner at least sign off on $800 billion in new revenues. He wouldn't call them tax increases. He would say it was closing loopholes, etc. But there was $800 billion there. That deal, of course, blew up for assorted reasons, and it's not really clear to me that Boehner could have gotten that through the House anyway. But President Obama moved the goalposts because of a whole other host of things that we don't need to go into. But the point is, it's a mess, and I think we agree on that. You and I.
Well, Jake, the White House briefing room, we watch it every day. We watch the questions and we watch the approaches and so forth. And you asked a question, we don't have to play it, but you asked a question a couple of days ago about the banking industry. And I believe you were talking about the Blackstone group, and the Democrats rage on about big banks too big to fail, and we need more regulations on the banks. And then you brought up an issue of the president's own team, and we find out that there are lots of people, of course, from the banking industry who work for the president in his campaign, worked in his cabinet, and so forth. And I don't think you ever really got an answer on the Blackstone question, did you?
No, I mean, the question was about the demonization of Bain Capital by the Obama campaign and their issue with Bain Capital.
Private equity, yes.
And all the things that private equity firm did. And I'm certainly not here to defend anything Bain Capital did, but they're a private equity firm. They did what they do, which is, I don't think all that unusual for private equity firms. Which are their charge is to create wealth. And sometimes they do that by going into factories, selling, loading them up.
Yeah, it's called the free market. People can buy and sell stuff.
I'm not taking issue with it. I'm just saying, they operate according to.
So what were you trying to get Carney to address?
Well, the fact that the night before, the president had attended a fundraiser in New York at the home of the president of the Blackstone Group, which is the world's largest private equity firm. And in fact, the Obama campaign has specifically gone after members of the Blackstone Group who are supporting Romney. Calling them out for betting against America and that sort of language. And here you have the president attending a fundraiser of the president of the Blackstone Group, not just a member, but the president, who presumably made money off of the same deals. And I just didn't understand the difference between good private equity firms, acceptable ones, and bad ones, because not only is there this whole Bain Capital is bad, even though some people who work for Bain Capital support the president and raise a lot of money for him. Bain Capital is bad, but Blackstone is good. But no, you have the campaign actually attacking Blackstone while taking money from the president of Blackstone.
Well, and Jane Carney then said, well, you'll have to ask the campaign about that. Is that right?
Yeah, he plopped it off on the campaign, but then he also his base.
Well, how do you tell the difference between the campaign and the White House these days?
It's difficult in an election year to tell the difference between a White House and the campaign. But the other thing I think what Carney basically was suggesting was there's a difference, and this is me paraphrasing him. This is not his language, but there is a difference between taking the money of these guys who work in private equity and being one of these guys from private equity running for president. That seems to be the line. I got it. Kind of perplexing.
Yeah, that's really clear. Jake, we have discovered, and I'm sure you read the Wall Street Journal piece by Kimberly Strassel last week on this, the enemies list. At the White House. So the Forbes magazine puts it this way: the Obama campaign is now marshaling the power of the office of the presidency against private citizens, using the Obama campaign's, quote, truth team to target individual Romney donors and supporters in a way that is alarmingly reminiscent of Richard Nixon's enemies list. Are you doing any of your own investigation into how this list is compiled and how the attacks on these individuals is going to be carried out?
Well, I think I'd have to go back and read Kim's story again, but I think some of what she was referring to were these individuals that the Obama campaign has targeted as,
Vandersloot. Frank Vandersloot is one of the key people. Right,
but people who are like, the big money, the bundlers and the people raising money for Mitt Romney. Romney does not disclose his bundlers. And the Obama campaign has put out the names of some of them and described them in less than flattering terms, Vandersloot being one of them, and some of the people from Blackstone that I talked about a couple minutes ago are also among this list. It's not the White House, it's the Obama campaign, so there is a difference between, here are the bad guys funding our opponent from the campaign, and Nixon's enemies list, but I'm not going to defend it. It seems a little bit more public than Nixon's enemies list, but I certainly get the idea of why are they going after public citizens. But look, when you're a bundler, you're entering the fray. I think that's probably one of the reasons why Romney keeps his bundler's name secret. The president does not, because you do get targeted for being one of the people behind.
Right. I understand that, but it seems like this administration, they want it both ways on this issue, right? Because they think, it's great for people to participate in the process, and we want people to be, having these debates about important issues, and we want more people voting, and we want more people out there as part of their civic duty to be part of this. And then when people do get to be part of it, and they do, put their own money on the line, they're vilified for having done so. I mean, I guess if Mr. Vandersloot were supporting the president, I guess it would just be he's engaging in his civic duty and freedom of choice to contribute to whomever he wants. But, the Forbes is saying he's marshaling the power of the office of the presidency against private citizens. And that description is something that, that made the hair on my arm stand up. I don't like that.
Well, I'd like to see evidence of that happening. I mean, if the evidence is anything the Obama campaign does is marshaling the power of the presidency, that might be a little bit much to claim. If there's evidence that the White House has actually taken action against any of these individuals, or the administration has, that would be another. Look, we do see this on as part of the meme. The Democratic meme is Mitt Romney is a heartless robber baron, and he and his fellow heartless robber barons are trying to take this country back and return it to the pre-recession days, et cetera. And that's the basic meme, and things are going to fit into that. And I would suspect that attacks on Romney bundlers are part of that, just as the Republican meme is.
Are they attacking David Geffen? Are they attacking? I don't think so. You know what I mean? David Geffen's kind of a Hollywood elite, but I don't see that really happening on the other side. But I'm throwing this out there because you're in there every day, and I think people in your own press pool there have asked questions to Carney about, well, how is this an official trip versus a campaign trip? And it all becomes kind of all one and the same, and it blurs together. And meanwhile, the taxpayers are paying these a lot of these bills for some of these trips, and well, you guys have raised this issue.
Yeah, we brought this up before. I think one of the problems with this is each president takes advantage of the power of the incumbency more so than the previous one. So George W. Bush, as president, held more fundraisers and flew in and out on Air Force One to fundraisers, allegedly tacking on an official event so that it would be paid for by the taxpayers, et cetera. He did it more than Clinton. Now Obama's doing it a lot more than George W. Bush was. And whoever the next president is will do it more than Obama does, and it just keeps going. And it's not a loophole. It is how the law is written. The problem is that the outrage is always just on one side, depending on who the president is. When it just keeps getting worse and worse.
I think this is taking it to Olympic levels with the stop-bys at the Lettermans and the Ellens and the has he been on America's Got Talent yet? That's coming. That'll be the finale. Okay, Jake Tapper, we appreciate your joining us, and we like watching you every day. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Laura.
All right, we're going to take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. Michelle inviting the soccer champs to the White House, so she could promote the value of winning or losing. Which one? We'll tell you when we come back.
The Laura Ingraham Show.